Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Master from Magnetism, Travis.
Alliance Assemble,
Assemble.
Volume 208, and we're back again. Episode 3 of X-Men 97. It's good to be a Marvel fan and good to be an X-Men fan. How is everyone doing tonight?
You know, I'm on spring break. I technically have tomorrow off and then back to normal with the weekend. Basically, it hasn't been the most exciting break, just a bunch of errands every day, but stuff I needed to get done. I'm good. I can't complain. You know, I told you guys earlier, I'm going to go watch cartoons, and I went and watched Invincible. I went and watched X-Men again. It's like, that's a good day.
Hey, you know, that sometimes not having anything to do except to relax and have no responsibilities, yeah, sometimes you need that.
Absolutely.
How about you, Travis?
Got to look forward, Chris. I'm not looking back. I had a crappy day, but I'm going to take the mantra Cyclops should take and not look back on the past and just look forward.
Forward,
into the
always
future.
forward. Like Luke Cage says, always forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming down with something or trying to fight back something right now. I've been burning the candles on both ends at work, but you know it's all worth it. Do it for the kids and my staff. So just hopefully I've got tomorrow off. I got a 3-day weekend. I've got a work day on Monday, so hoping to get some stuff done with that. So trying to, you know, take my wife's advice and try to ease it back, but I don't know what that means. And David is in the chat, and tonight I will prove many times Cyclops was wrong, not only in the comics, but also in this show. I have concrete evidence to point out why Cyclops is very wrong in this episode in the comics. So, but I appreciate you being here. So, but yeah, so let us get all the lovely show plugs out of the way. Network plugs. We are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUAPod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. We've got our dollar tiers, our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows. We have our previous show, We Can Watch This All Day, the Marvel Alliance Infinity Saga Rewatch. 24 episodes are up there, and Brent and I just dropped the first episode of our newest Patreon show, and what is that called, Brent?
Tales of the House of X.
Yes, and what was that episode we dropped this week?
I mean, it was covering a true treasure of comic book movies with Deadpool.
Yes, Deadpool. And what kind of effort did we give, Brent, on that episode?
Maximum effort. What other kind of effort is there?
Yeah,
I passed that test. I didn't even know what you were saying at first.
I was like, you're the one who wrote the tagline for the episode on that one.
I did.
Glad you passed. So, but yeah, I know Travis, you're a big fan of the movie, so I'm hoping that you know the patrons are starting to enjoy this new venture we're going down, looking at all our favorite X-Men movies from the Fox era. So next month will be Deadpool 2, followed by The Wolverine, Logan, X-Men X2, X-Men First Class, and Days of Future Past. So if you're not a member of our Patreon, why aren't you? Go to www.patreon.com/GUA Network to get all the lovely Patreon content, including Mr. Hines here with his co-host from DC Alliance, Joe, going DC films through the years. You said V for Vendetta is up next.
Yes, it'll be up, I think, probably on Sunday. I'll have that edit by. Don't have to work Monday, so that'll be nice. And Batman Begins is coming up, too, which, again, I'm very excited to visit that one. That's been a while, and it's a favorite of mine. So we're getting into some good ones now after going through a few crappy films. Well,
I mean, you know, again, but then you'll also have to go through some other ones later on, too. So, you know, don't...
Yeah, you're right.
But I will say this: I did enjoy your most recent episode, A History of Violence. I'm a big fan of that movie and the graphic novel. So
yes, some of these I'm after having the chance to go back. Same Road to Perdition. That's another one. I was like, damn, I really enjoy that. And I did not know. I heard that seen me quote it a lot of times where the guy say, if you walk out here now, you're like, all this protection is gone that you know. I heard it quoted so much I didn't realize what it was from. So yeah,
Yep.
these are formative for me too.
So yeah, so you can listen to that. We've got Joe doing his solo multiverse minutes, looking at the Disney dives. Up next for him, coming up in a couple of days, will be Fantasia. So I'm looking forward to that as a big Disney fan myself. So if you can't join us on Patreon, totally understand. If you could take 30 to 90 seconds and rate and review Marvel Line solo feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcatcher of choice. But apparently I found this out. If you listen to us on Google Music, you better find another podcatcher because April 1st, that doesn't exist anymore.
Google's, it's moving to YouTube, but I think you still have to, like, you need to actively subscribe through YouTube, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
Okay.
in fact, we probably need to talk to Snell about that at some point because I don't know how that works on our end of things. But just to play it safe, find another podcatcher.
Overcast is a good one. Brent and I use that.
It is a good one, but it's not on Android. So if you're an Android user, that won't help you very much.
We gotta work on that. All right, so really appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for all your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world, gives you rewards for ordering more, referrals, everything like that. We got the final, I can't believe I'm saying this, the final volume of ROM. The Romnibus is complete with this final volume 3, the Marvel Years ROM. I never would have thought I would have seen one, let alone 3 volumes. The first volume of the Omnibus is the highest selling pre-order in Marvel comic collected edition history. So figure that out. A lot of people love their ROM.
No, people like it, so nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep. Punisher Max by Aaron and Dylan coming into print. We got X-Men Extinction Agenda Omnibus. First time ever in that collection. At that point, got some lovely Jim Lee art going on here. Some others. Ghost Rider 2099. First time ever into print, coming out later in the year. So use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. And we want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right, gentlemen. Episode 3 of X-Men 97, Fire Made Flesh. I do like the callback of the title of this. This is what Jean says when she was brainwashed as the Black Queen in the Hellfire Club during the beginnings of the Phoenix Saga. So, yeah. So, high-level thoughts before we get into spoilers.
Fantastic episode, but wow, are they moving fast? Back in the 90s for the original series, this episode probably would have been a 3-part arc at minimum. Maybe it would have been a longer one, but I feel like at minimum it would have been 3. And that's not a criticism. I like it. They're doing a lot. They do have a longer runtime than the episodes back then had, but wow, they are using it, and they're using it so well. Just the action is fantastic. The pace, yes, it's fast, but they're doing a great job of it. And man, you are just emotionally invested in what's going on with some of this stuff. And yeah, last week, it left off with some other Jean showing up at the house, and there were all the discussions that were like, okay, we know who it is, but now we get to find out more about what's actually happening. And we don't know everything, but we know more. And I tell you, I was just blown away at how good I thought this episode was. I'm going to say it was easily the best episode of the 3, and I love the previous 2. So this show they are crushing it.
I thought the animation stood out for me in this episode. It was amazing, especially some of all the worries I had going in. Like that was old news. Like the animation, fantastic here. All the Dante's Inferno, I'll call it, play for Beast to not spoil anything. That looked fantastic. And then it seemed like every character gets a chance to shine in every episode. Mm-hmm. At least a 30 to 45 second action montage, which is nice to see because I can remember sometimes more after that, some characters would be on the wayside and we get old animation used for some of the action. I love this, like Brent said. So this is going at a little bit of a faster pace, but I do think that they are keeping up. Like they are making the show for the audience that used to watch the X-Men show back when it was in the 90s, like the age of 30 to I don't think they're making this for the younger audience. So It, these
Definitely not with this
stories,
episode. This is definitely probably the most risque episode we've had of X-Men.
and these stories can be told faster. So that was one of the things that I did find with some of these longer episodes. Yes, they were nice in the older seasons, but this is just a better way of telling stories. And I'm all in for this show. And like Brent said, there is an argument to be made that this was the best of the 3 episodes.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of the show and Scott McClellan. Brent, Travis, and I are very familiar at that point. But he was saying he and I have a very similar ideas, and I'm sure you all will echo it. What the animated series can do, and it's still amazing they did it, is they were infamous for taking a storyline, a huge comic book arc, and putting it into a single episode and doing it well. And now you have this episode, the 97, they're extending it a little bit, a few extra minutes than what your normal 20-minute episode would be, about 5 to 7 minutes longer. And they're using that time and effort and care so well. I mean, the storyline this is built off of is a whole series, what it leads to is the Arc Inferno. That's huge. Now, they miniaturized it into just kind of focused in this area, but you still get the basics idea of what was going on. And I am just blown away by still how great the quality of writing has been and how every episode they up it and they build character. They build the development of these characters that we become even more invested in everything that's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And Travis, what you said about the animation is so true. It's so true. Like, there's a couple shots in those trailers and stuff. People are like, "Oh, this part looks a little weird. This part looks a little funky." I tell you, in this particular episode, I didn't have any of those. Nothing stood out to me as weird or funky. And you can't count a whole segment of it if something there did, because it was all weird and funky because it was supposed to be weird and funky. Like, there's one shot with just Rogue and Magneto. I'm not going to spoil what it is yet, but I tell you, that is just like so weird and confusing and disconcerting to look at, but you couldn't look away either.
No, and they're definitely homaging, and I'll get to that in our breakdown of what they're homaging to and tipping the hat to of an animation style at that point, so in series of nature. So, all right, we're tiptoeing around it. I know everyone's jumping at the bit to talk about it, so we're going to take our first ad break so that if you have not watched X-Men 97 Episode 3, stop, watch, and then come back. But if you're ready to be spoiled, ladies and gentlemen, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they could be a bit loud, so give it a 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So we start off, as always, we get our intro. Another change with it. Instead of, we've had Scott, we've had Magneto, and now we have Jean doing the previously on X-Men. So we get that, but we also get a few new intro scenes with Magneto fighting the X-Men back from the previous show because Storm's in her old hair. And then we get Roberto actually taking the place of a Jubilee from the original X-Men intro, running to the chain link fence at that point. Lilandra smashing a control panel with Professor X in the background. It's definitely, we get a moment from the Dark Phoenix saga with Cyclops trying to stop Jean. See Gambit dip Rogue and try to kiss her, and she puts her hand so she can kiss him. So this is becoming a trend for them that they're altering and either adding things in that we've seen before or just adding in fun sequences that may not make the final cut, just of building little moments with the characters. How do you all feel about that?
Well, if you watch it and kind of pay attention, they're reminding you of stuff, right? Like, Dark Phoenix, and Phoenix is going to come up in this. No, we're not going to really, we do get a glimpse of the Phoenix, but, it's not a Phoenix episode, but they invoke the Phoenix, if you will. The stuff with Lilandra, that's where Professor X went. He went to the Shi'ar. I think we pretty much all assume we're going to check in on Xavier and the Shi'ar at some point, and it feels like they're kind of reminding you that the Shi'ar are a thing, because we haven't actually seen them yet this season. So, hey, we're just sticking it out there, like subliminal messages going on here, just reminding you, hey, they're a thing, they're out there, they're coming back.
I think it works on a couple different folds. First of all, it's a really good way to get other people who just are coming into X97 to go back and watch the show. If you're trying to start, you'll see these old clips. Being like, what is that from? A possible way to get you to go back. It's also good for storytelling, just to continue on with that. And I will appreciate that they don't, if they're going to show the GR, at least they're not in this episode. That's what I appreciate, because that's something that I did find frustrating at times, even when this with this show back in the day, was, oh, we're going to see Cyclops' father in the preview for the only other episode we've ever seen him. I wonder what's going to happen this episode. So
Yeah.
again, they're not doing that here. They're more like, this is some of the homework you should have for this backward knowledge, and go on like that. So again, I think it's a great way to do things.
So we see, I'm going to call her new old Jean in the bed in the X Mansion with the other Jean, basically probing her mind and seeing several flashes of Jean from the show's past, but without her face, which I thought was a cool. I mean, it's building towards the creepiness of this episode is going to happen later at that point. And so, we see her in her normal costume as Marvel Girl, and even when she's kissing Scott with Wolverine walking away, I love it that they brought that back. They did that on purpose.
Always got to dig it into Wolverine that way.
I was hoping, please let us get Wolverine touching the faceless.
Can he get a W? Can he get a W this season?
Not in love. Wolverine doesn't ever get a W in love.
Yep,
No,
get her as Dark Phoenix in their wedding. So the question is, we see flashes of Jean waking up in Sinister's lab and escaping. So Beast later reveals that the carbon dating on each of their blood, that the new Jean is actually their Jean. It is the real Jean, while the one they have been with for whoever knows how long, is the clone. Because her blood, her carbon dating is later. So here's my theory. I want to see what y'all think about this one. I think, again, seeing that they both have memories of Phoenix at that point. I know a lot of people saying, oh, she was swapped out during that To Death Do Us Part. And I was like, well, that's before Phoenix Saga. That's way too early. I think she was swapped out during the Phalanx invasion, because if you remember, Sinister was there. He was one of the few people who could not be affected at that point. And at one point towards, when Jean escapes at that point, he could have swapped her out. Now, he could have gotten the blood from Jean, obviously, when he experimented, got their stuff during Till Death Do Us Part, and then swapped her out there. That's kind of my only thinking of. I don't know if we're ever going to get an answer, but that's my running tin hat foil theory.
That was a season 5 story, and so it kind of makes sense that it's towards the end. On one hand, it's like, well, not that you would get, at this point, I'm going to call her Madeline. If you would get Madeline and Jean to have a conversation, which I don't really think Madeline would be up for, they could talk and say, do you remember this event? And any event that they both remember had to be the real Jean for. Because the clone, as soon as the clone is born and has all her memories from up to that moment, but they diverge after that.
Yeah.
And so anything that Madeline remembers that OG Jean does not remember, well, that's a diversion. That tells you who it was. They both remember the Phoenix. We know who the Phoenix was. They both, I'm like, why are they questioning some of this? We both remember that we got married to Scott. Well, then we know it had to be the original one who did it, right? So some of that I'm questioning. I like your idea of it happening during that time, because Jean really didn't do a lot in that last season. I mean, really, once the Phoenix stuff was wrapped up, she didn't do a lot in the show to begin with. But that does seem, especially with Sinister's involvement, like a good time to go back through. Of course, it could have been an off-screen time, between season 5 and the revival. But as far as we know, she wasn't pregnant in the finale, but that still could have been Madeline at that point, pre conceiving Nathan. So it to me, it's not as big. Like it's not like it's all the way. Like I've seen some people saying it could be all the way back in season 2. I'm like, no, it's not that far back. There's no way it's that far back.
It starts back then. It starts back then because I think that's when he gets the stuff to make Madeline is before they escape. He gets the stuff to make Madeline. Then I think that he can't get her basically going until the events of the Phoenix play out, and then we get a piece of Jean going into Madeline, a la the comics. And I do think that's probably the way they'll go with this. And it could, she could be up and running, and he could set the emotion after the events that Chris is talking about, or during the events that Chris is talking about. I don't think that it happened way back in the season 2 premiere. I think that's way too early.
No, it's too early for that.
It's the first time.
I mean, blood samples, sure, but the actual. I have 2 Jeans on the table in front of me, and they escape, and one of them escapes, and I put that diamond in the forehead of the other one. No, that's way too soon.
No, Cyclops was with Jean the entire time when they were captured in that episode. I remember that episode pretty well, and they did not leave each other the entire time.
Yeah, and even going back, I forgot to mention this. I'm sorry, but the skip intro is now fully disabled during my viewing of this show, just because I need that in my blood, in veins, all the time, that theme, and seeing exactly what's there. Now, you know what else I'm here for? All the cameos that Morph gives us.
Every time.
Yes. And he brought out one gem later in this episode, 2 versions of one gem in this episode. But I love when he's there and pulls out Spiral, who we have seen in the series at that point.
Yep. Spiral, and then later, we might as well mention it now. He pulls out Magic, which kind of does raise some questions timeline wise, because when we saw Ileana earlier in the show, she was quite a bit younger than how he presented her here. But that's nitpicking. It was still pretty cool to see her.
We'll take the awesomeness over the nitpicking here.
Yeah, and then her, I don't remember what she calls it, her demon form or whatever. We got that for Magic as well.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things. Some of the comic book background of Madeline Pryor, she debuts in Uncanny X-Men 168, and she becomes the Goblin Queen in 240. When Jean appeared to die, because, Jean dies a lot at that point, we put that in quotes, because Cyclops leaves the team, trying to find himself, moves to Alaska, and Jean's death, here's the thing, Chris Claremont meant for Jean's death to be permanent. She was not going to come back. Chris Claremont was very big on long-form storylines and with stakes. He wanted Scott to have a happy ending, and write him out of the book as well. So Madeline was meant to be brought in. And so when he met Madeline Pryor, he meant it to look like Jean, have a connection, instantly attracted to her. She even fooled Professor X because she had, at the time when Jean died, she was in a plane crash. So obviously, it looks and sounds like her, but is not her because she wouldn't be around. Now, the person who... it's Marvel editorial that made Chris Claremont create a storyline that he didn't want to create. He was forced to retcon the Phoenix hadn't been Jean. It was just a copy of Jean, and Jean was at the bottom of the Hudson River in a cocoon.
Wait, so are you saying Marvel editorial got involved and did some stuff?
I will say specifically Jim Shooter got involved.
They did some stuff with clones. They don't have a history of messing with people and their clones or anything like that.
Well, this is where I will point out where Cyclops is wrong at this point. The second he finds out that Jean is back, he abandons Madeline Pryor, abandons his son, goes straight back to Jean, forms an entirely new team, and couldn't be bothered anymore.
In the comics, okay, yeah.
Yes.
It's like in the show, at least, he still very much was for Nathan.
We'll get to the end. We'll get to the end.
He was questioning Madeline and Jean. He made it clear he didn't know what to think there. But he was still all about trying to get Nathan. But yes, in the comics, he's like, forget you, let's go X Factor.
Yeah, I won't say that, but let's cut him a little bit of slack here. He got Maury right in front of his eyes.
I have personally asked Chris Claremont about his opinion on this. That man, these are many things this man does not will vent on. He hated doing Inferno. He hated the changes it made. He does not like this at all. He's gone on record so many times. So yeah, he founded X-Men, and Madeline for some reason joined the X-Men. She don't have any powers at this point, and eventually it was when it reveals the truth. When Phoenix sacrificed herself later in the series, it ended up giving her some memories of Jean, which drove Madeline Pryor insane, and then got these sorcerer powers and led to the Inferno Saga, which right here you can get in lovely omnibus form with yes, that's Madeline Pryor in a very scantily clad thing that this episode kind of made it a little more PG, but they went places with it.
Sure.
So that's kind of the comic book history, but everyone is in disbelief about this. They can't believe what's happened. Scott is devastated and immediately says, like, oh yeah, I kind of believe it. I'm really, like, no one questions it at all. And now we'll call her Madeline, even though she doesn't get that name until the end of the show. But for, like you said, Brent, for all intents and purposes, we're calling her Madeline. Says, like, well, Storm would have believed me. And takes the baby with her.
I don't know that she would have.
I don't think she would have either.
The things that they've seen, and frankly, the trust that they have in beast science. Now, sure, comic book science, I used gamma rays to carbon date 2 life forms. Yes, it's weird. It's comic book science, but is it any weirder than anything else we've seen in the X-Men? No, it's not. But I don't think I agree. I don't know that Storm would have. She would have questioned. She'd have been open to a conversation, but everybody was willing to have a conversation. Nobody was like kicking her out or anything like that.
I have a question for you. Did Storm get mad with Beast when he told her that she lost her powers possibly forever? No. Did Storm go on a quest to get her powers back? No. Storm was just off doing her own thing, accepting that she didn't have powers, accepting Beast's diagnosis, and then somebody shows up. So yeah,
she should have challenged Cyclops for a battle for leadership and then win, and then send Cyclops packing.
There you go.
Happened in the comics.
It happened in the comics. Pull it from the comics.
You can form a new group then. That is acceptable. The first time, no, that's not acceptable.
I lost my leadership. I'm going to quit. Oh, yeah, exactly. Cyclops is right. My butt. So
let's not take 5 steps backwards with Cyclops now. He's come a long way in these first 3 episodes.
I'm pointing out other things too. Don't get me started at that. At the end of the episode, I have questions about him as a father at this point too. So she walks out in disbelief after that. And, so she leaves with Nathan. They let her leave the room with Nathan at that point. And even then, like, Scott goes in and even hesitates calling her Jean and trying to smooth things out. He leaves at her request, still with Nathan in her hands.
But it's still, see, I disagree with you here. I disagree with you here. She hasn't done anything violent yet.
No, you're right.
She knocked out like the petri dish or whatever out of Beast's hand.
Yeah.
Like that's all she's done, and she is still his mother. Like there's no question about that. They know who physically gave birth to Nathan. So I don't think the fact that she now should maybe somebody have said, is she in the right frame of mind to be maybe, but I think of it this way. Cyclops would have just triggered her way worse by trying to pull Nathan right there. And she was not going to let anything. So I give him a pass on this.
Maybe
I get it. I'm just being a little ridiculous, but I was just kind of like, there's no even trying of like, should we let her alone with Nathan? I know she hasn't done anything, but now we've kind of ticked her off. So
they're used to having Professor X, Chris. They're used to having Professor X, so he just can read minds and know if she's gonna go crazy. Now they don't have. They're still trying to navigate that. Maybe put somebody on the baby next time. You don't even have to take her away. Just have somebody talk to her, like a rogue. Go up and stand up and talk to her.
No, she's in the danger room right now with Magnus at that point, so we know what's going on there.
I mean, according to Morph, yeah.
Well, that schedule tells otherwise.
I think Morph set that schedule.
Well, no, I think he set the additional ones. I think there was one.
Yes,
after.
the first one I think was real, but he did all the others.
Yes, yeah. You have to watch his little hand movements there. So when he leaves her alone through the baby monitor, we hear a voice. We hear a, dare I say, sinister voice.
A voice of somebody so dark and evil you can only describe as sinister.
Sinister. What do y'all think of our new voice actor for Mr. Sinister?
No problems. It worked.
No problem.
Obviously, it's a little different. Everybody is a little different on the show. Even when it's the same actors, it's still a little bit different. So it's fine. I have no complaints. They still did whatever effect to his voice to give you that sinister voice style. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
No complaints. Yeah.
Good. So we quickly go back to the lab after we hear that voice, to Beast's lab, and he's still working on Bishop's time bracelet. So we already can, seeing many of these shows at this point, we're getting ready, saying, oh, okay, this Bishop's going to get ready to go back in time at some point. So Scott asked Bishop why he hasn't heard of the gene clone in his history, and timey-wimey stuff goes on at that point, and we haven't seen the TVA come into the animated universe, which could be fun. That could be fun.
There's also an inconsistency here with the time band. If it was damaged and needed repair, he should have already popped back to his own time, as evidenced by all the other times he's won the time band.
Mm-hmm. He has to keep that on.
That said, this could be a different time band. Like, sure, we can acknowledge that, but it's sure meant to invoke the time band of the previous series.
His explanation was a little off too. He was like, pages go back and forth, flicking around.
Well, with the
what
number,
are you trying to talk to me about?
With the number of times he personally has been involved in timeline changing events, like when he jumps back in time and then goes back to see his forge and everything's different, and he does it again and again and again. Like that didn't. Yes, it's a weird explanation, but it makes as much sense as the rest of time travel does.
Take a notebook with you or something, just so you can jot down any major events that are different, or
I mean, you get into more comic book science, like Beast figures out saying, "I recognize who this could have done this at that point. The only thing it could be is someone of Sinister." And I was like, "Yeah, we're just going with it at this point." But what I really enjoy, and like I'm with you on this one, it's. Saying this right now could be my favorite episode as well. It's definitely running because I'm a big horror person, and the sequence that we go into where we go back to the bedroom and we hear Sinister talking to her, but I thought one of the creepiest and quickest things, the lightning flash, and you see like Sinister, he's not there, but he's there at that point. That was a great sequence.
Yeah,
that they did right
really,
there.
Really cool.
Perfect way to introduce him into this new series as the big bad for this season. Like, I mean, couldn't get any better. How ominous.
Yeah. And she starts getting a little nutty, starts smashing the pictures. I love the wedding photo is exactly the same as the actual wedding of Cyclops and Jean in the comics. She then starts transforming into the Goblin Queen with, as I called, the PG-13 version of her costume. And now she has sorcerer's powers, like she has in comics, and she says, "They will know my inferno." And I'm like, whoop, up, she said it. She said the line.
You picked up the book at the same time. Like,
So what did y'all think of that kind of sequence of her just saying, "Fine, they don't want me. I'm not Jean. I'm gonna make them all pay."
I mean, it was a really cool transformation sequence, and yeah, you're right, like the PG-13 version of the costume for sure. But where'd the Goblin Queen name come from? I don't know. I'll call it something sinister implanted in the back of her mind somewhere.
This is where I sat back and started to watch the animation really pick up, because it starts here and it just goes from a 6 in terms of like, oh my god, to a 10 in a matter of a couple minutes.
I am wondering because during this sequence we do see like Sinister kind of saying like how it all came about, in the sense of like she's a clone. He puts his red diamonds in there, which is actually a tip of the hat to what happened recently in the Krakoa era with the Sins of Sinister story arc at that point. But I'm really surprised, and I don't know if we are going to get an answer, that they didn't just during this flashback of when this happened. I was kind of surprised. It wouldn't have taken but a few seconds, but I'm kind of surprised they didn't after they did everything else.
I think that's meant to make us speculate as well, because I do think we're going to get the villain monologue of Sinister explaining to Scott when he did this and why. Maybe Scott and Jean. So, because I don't think he's outright explained yet why he wants to do that. Has he explained that he wanted to go after Apocalypse? I can't remember him outright saying that in any of maybe the final season, and that's the one I'm remembering less, but I don't remember him outwardly saying it. I know
he's worked with Apocalypse in the show. Now, in the comics, they have a long history at that point, and he wants to, as we get later on, he considers Scott and Jean to be the perfect mutants to produce an offspring that could challenge and take down Apocalypse.
Not right.
I feel like not revealing it now is just leaving a card they can play later in the season. And
Yeah.
by the end of the season, I would be pretty surprised if we don't know more information about all of this related to Madeline and Sinister, etc.
Sinister's going to get a W, and I think that's when we'll see that stuff play out, Chris, because he's going to have them captured at some point.
Oh yeah. So we go to Wolverine and Morph and Gambit exit in danger room. They've had a hard training sequence, and as we talked about, Morph noticing the Rogue and Magneto are up next, and I do like the line that Wolverine tells Morph after he's messed with Gambit, saying, "I think you just sent his hush puppies into his stomach."
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting very cheeky in this show. I'm very impressed.
They're remembering that I genuinely believe like the primary audience for the show are people who watched it as kids.
Yeah.
Which means they're adults now, so they do a little bit more risque moments, if you will.
You can pull those off in animation.
Yep. And so we see Morph heads into the showers, and he kind of sees someone in the background. He thinks it's Wolverine, and then we see Jubilee and Roberto watching a movie. We then start having the Xavier's mansion turn into what I call a house of horrors, and this is where I really get into it. And I will say this: I am not a fan of anime, and I know this show is kind of towing the line in the animation style with anime and modeling it after the original series, but it still works for me. But I do know a series that it is leaning in towards. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Chainsaw Man, but they really lean hard into the horror side of anime when creating the creatures versions of this at that point. So what did y'all think of like all the different ones where you see Morph thinks it's Wolverine, it's Sinister in the shower. Creature comes out of the TV to chase Roberto. It's got the face of his mom calling him a freak. Gambit sees Rogue in her Savage Land gear cuddling up to Magneto, very similar to Uncanny X-Men 274 when they hooked up in the Savage Land. Beast seems to be the one saying he going into the elevator, gets greeted by a demon. It's like, oh,
one of us is on the wrong floor.
Yeah.
that genuinely made me laugh. But if these are all supposed to be their greatest fears, I have questions about Beast. In general, I thought it was a great sequence. The morph part was probably my favorite just because I always think, going back to the original run, they do a good job with Morph and his reactions and his trauma that he was put through by Sinister. And they even briefly show you that moment where he talks about Sinister controlling people, and they go to that controlled look where he has the dark circles under his eyes and things like that. It's like they're not hiding any of that. And so Morph's reactions to it was definitely my favorite, I guess, if you can call it that. But the whole sequence was incredibly well done.
Yeah, I'm right there with Brent too, with Morph. I love the backstory. It always goes well with Sinister. Even his intro got a little bit of that, his solo part of that. And again, it's nice when he showed the face of the old X-Men the animated series when he was controlled by Sinister. That just goes to ring home even more. But like Chris said earlier, the monsters, the demons, whatever you want to call them, those were fantastic. I thought those were great. Some of those were very scary, and just seeing how the X-Men deal with that. And when we get to my man Bishop, like that's one we got to talk about, because just looking back on how his powers were used in the old show and then seeing him here, I mean, like, woo, woo.
Yeah, Christine Bentley in the chat. Yeah, we had mentioned that a little bit earlier about my theory about the gene being swapped during the Phalanx invasion at that point. So yeah, we are definitely in agreement with you on that. So definitely good points on that one. It's just very cool seeing kind of them lean really hard and give us a mini version of the Inferno, because in Inferno, what she did was there's two demons opening up a portal to and from hell, but using the powers to give the heroes their biggest nightmares at all. So, and what did you think about the whole kind of fight in hell?
That's where I was talking about the animation really stepping up. Like when Cyclops shoots Bishop, and then he unleashes. We haven't gotten anything close to that, but prior, like nothing close to that. And this is another reason that I think the animation was fantastic in this episode. And he just mows them down. But we get every hero, like I said earlier, seems like they all get a chance to use their powers. And again, I'm all for that. I'm all for the montage of heroes taking down bad guys.
I loved it when Bishop and Cyclops, after that sequence, looked at each other and both said,
Yeah.
"You're welcome."
Yeah, it was awesome.
What I thought was really cool was the Skull Sentinel that they eventually actual Jean took down. So that I thought that was very, very cool. Definitely modeled after series Berserk. So
Also, seeing regular Jean as well being like that at this exact same time, like she comes out of it as well. So I did love seeing her use her abilities. It's easy to see who's the original OG Jean.
It was funny with Jean. She's like they tell her when she's like, "Oh, I gotta go help." They're like, "Oh, your body can't take it." She says, "My body's gonna be fine," and she does the astral projection, right? Right before that, she tied her hair in a ponytail. Why bother if you're not physically going there? I did.
That's how you get geared up, man. You gotta.
Really, I think that was so visually we would have a reason to see her that way. Like when they're together later and they're looking the same, we could tell who it was. But most of her time, she was astral Jean anyway, so we could tell which was which. Not even nitpick. It's just something I thought was funny on my second watch through.
Don't I get that astral hair tied up in anything, man?
I mean, you'd hate for someone to pull it, I guess. Yeah.
So, but let's take our next ad break before we kind of break down the last part of the episode at that point. So, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. They could be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So, Madeline taunts him a little bit, takes Nathan. They're left behind and licking their wounds, and all of a sudden, Rogue and Magneto show up, where she runs to Gambit and says, "Oh, Remy!" At that point, I was like, where were you all during this whole thing? I know you're in the danger room, but how were you not having issues with this? Because they act like nothing's ever happened.
We didn't see what their events were. I mean, we don't know what they went through, and they were also together. Maybe because like Roberto and Jubilee came through it pretty easily too. And so maybe it's a case of they were together, and so they had an easier time of it.
Cut my boy Gambit loose, Rogue, please. Like, good God, this is getting a little emasculating in front of my eyes here. Like, come out.
I'm of the philosophy that she can't let go of him because she does truly love him. Magneto's giving her more of the physical. Remy is the one that she really, truly won't ever be able to let go fully.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Morph tells them the history of Sinister. For those of you who don't know the history of Sinister, there's a actual decent episode in the final season called Descent that tells the history of Nathaniel Essex. So Morph even shows his corrupted side, the time that we mostly knew Morph during the series, and telling him what happened, and that he knows where Sinister most likely took him. And for those that didn't realize, saying, well, Madeline Pryor gave birth to a baby and calls him Nathaniel. Yeah, of course, she's saying his Nathan and after Nathaniel Essex. Yeah. So they head to Sinister's lab, and we see him put Nathan in a vat filled with some green liquid. How is he breathing? Like, he is submerged. Like, there's no breathing apparatus. He is in there for a long period of time. How is he breathing?
I wondered the same thing. It's not water, whatever he's in, because it gave him the techno-organic virus that Nathan got in the comics. I guess something to do with that.
Something comic book science. Something
comics. Yeah. That's the real answer.
I'm sorry. These are the things that I try not to do, but that was something I could be like, no, I'm sorry.
I think it's a fair question.
Yo, 100%. I'd say they'll say something like he's a mutant, but
what did you all think of the fight with the Goblin Queen and the rest of the team?
This was pretty great, Chris. I enjoyed this, and seeing Scott try to appeal to her as well, because they did have a relationship for a while. it was cool, and she is quite powerful. That's one thing that you really get from this.
She took down Magneto.
Yeah, when Jean unleashes, she's got tons of power, and the Goblin Queen is Jean unleashed.
Yes, and again, like Chris said, the Magneto fight was fantastic because we see him so powerful the episode prior, lifting him up into space, and then we see her just completely body him pretty easily.
Yeah, I really when we see Cyclops draw blood and she kind of wipes her. Oh, you want to fight now too?
She like puts it on her lip like it's lipstick or something.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, extra.
It's really creepy.
Getting extra creepy there.
And it works really well. As you already said, Brent, Jean, gonna astro. But even before she does that, I like the role reversal we see with Wolverine trying to get her to get back, like center herself, and he says, like, "Look at me, focus on me, look at my mind. You care about me? You care that much about me? Deeper than that." And I think it's an interesting question to read, especially with how we end this episode. Are we going to bring back the Wolverine triangle with her and Scott at that point? Because she doesn't push away at that point, I know it's early, but it's definitely something that she really sees. Like, I know Jean knew that he liked her, but I don't know if she really knew how much, at that point, like how deep this goes and how still he holds a torch for her still.
They could have all just been one big happy family, Jean, Madeline, Logan, Scott, like the whole thing could have worked for them all. Like it's basically happening in the comics minus Madeline. So that's recent, sure, but like it's like, hey, everybody wins, right? No, of course, it's still not the same.
Do the whole back forth, like in under cups, and be here. You guys pick one each and go out.
As though it's that easy, just to duplicate one of them.
Yep. So she does and especially that sequence where you get Jean and Madeline kind of talking with each other. She's resisting it. We see a lot of history that they both obviously share. It's like, those are my memories. No, those are not your memories. These are my memories. But her remembering Nathan and that he is a representation of love that breaks her free from Sinister because it's the best thing that's ever happened to her. There hasn't been much to happen in her life. So, so it brings up the idea of, love conquers all.
Yeah, love conquers all.
Love conquers. That is the fight against it. Just bring love. He just needs a hug.
Yeah,
that's what Cyclops shoots at. That's what Cyclops shoots at him later. Like love beams.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow.
And I will say this. Here's another thing about it. In the comics, Scott was very resistant to name their son Nathan because apparently he had a bully in the orphanage that was very mean to Scott at that point.
Definitely didn't affect him at all. He's definitely a nice, even keeled, grown up Nathan.
Yep.
I mean, he went through some things.
Yeah, he went through some things. The fight against Sinister, kind of quick, kind of, and especially how quick it was. We've heard the rumors that Sinister is going to be the big villain of this, so this is not the last time we're going to see him. And especially, we get Scott blasting. Was it Scott or Goblin Queen that blasted him? I thought it was Scott.
Well, they both did.
Scott.
Both did, but
Cyclops hit him with the optic blast, which did the whole green goo stuff.
Yes.
And then right after that, Madeline hits him with a telekinetic blast.
And I love what he utters. It's like this, the hypnosis that she's still under a spell when she goes, Ladybird, Ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire and your child is all gone. Stops her from further chasing him down.
And I expected her to turn around and just unload on the X-Men again when that happened. And no, it wasn't that. It was just a stop, just like a kill command.
Yeah, very like Manchurian Candidate. If you've never seen that movie, don't go for the updated version. Go for the original. Highly recommend.
Makes sense what Mr. Senator would do there, though. You always have a backup plan when you're an evil genius like that.
So they rescue Nathan, but they suddenly realize he's been infected with a new strain of the techno-organic virus that was introduced in the series during the Phalanx Covenant. And then later in Tempest Fusion, when Grayson Creed tried to use it to frame mutants are spreading this disease around. Now, what Sinister was trying to do, yes, he was purposely infecting Nathan with this to hopefully his theory was them producing Madeline and Scott producing this baby, he would fight it and be able to overcome it, therefore build up his strength to be one of the most powerful mutant. Now, B says it would take too long for him to even develop a cure. He has no idea because this is a strain they've never had, they've never fought, they've never developed, and he doesn't know. And so now in the comics, it wasn't Sinister who did this to Nathan, it was Apocalypse who did this to Nathan. Mm-hmm. And so they asked, Beast and Jean, Madeline asked Bishop, could they find a cure? He says, I don't know, but I know someone who can, and we're all figuring it's Forge at this point.
Yeah, it's got to be Forge.
It got to be considering where they go next.
Now, in the comics, we know what Nathan becomes, and we've already got hints of this even in the original series. He becomes Cable. Now, Nathan Summers was at one point in the comics an Omega level mutant. His telekinetic and telepathic powers were on par with Mom, and could have exceeded. The reason he is not an Omega level mutant at that point because he uses basically most of his telekinetic powers to keep the techno-organic virus at bay. Mm-hmm. And so that is why a lot, even though sometimes he's referred to it, he is not. His power set is very much reduced because of his ability. He has to hold that back.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So we know we're getting Cable later on, but yeah, as you said earlier, Scott is very much against this. He doesn't want to abandon his kid, just like he felt his father did at that point, but he knows what really happened. So the funny thing is it's really not true. But I really wish, this is where I know you have choices in this, and yes, I was being a little unfair to Scott at that point. What I didn't like is we didn't see Scott say goodbye, because even if they changed it, I do not like that, because yes, I give Scott a lot of crap. I do. Some true, some just to be funny and poke Brent and David and all you other Cyclops fans. But
this is fair.
I thought that was very poor that they did. We see Madeline say goodbye, which is good. I'm glad she got to say. We did not let Scott say goodbye. Now, they could say, "Oh, he was just over." He's not. He doesn't know if he's ever going to see his son again. He tried
to play the "I'm too angry at this decision to say goodbye." So I wasn't as fan of that either, Chris. I thought that he could have did that, and I hope that there is some tension between him and Cable when we do see Cable for the first time, if we see him in this timeline.
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be tension because there usually is between Cable and.
Well, they were oblivious,
but
they were oblivious in the previous series.
They were. They'll find out, I'm sure. But it did not sit well with me either that Cyclops did that. Do I believe he would be stubborn and do that? I do. But in this case, it was not the right decision that Cyclops made. Absolutely not. He leaves. He's like, and I get it. I get the abandonment issues he has. And even though he knows the real story of what happened with his dad, he still grew up with those feelings.
Yeah.
And so just knowing what happened doesn't change those. And he doesn't want to impart those feelings upon his son. But I think he kind of still did by walking out of that room.
Yeah, 100%. Right.
I do like, though, Madeline says goodbye, Bishop takes the baby, they go back in time, we don't see where they end up, or we don't see Forge, so obviously I think we're going to get something like that. We will get a revisiting of that, I'm very confident.
Well, considering the next episode, Chris, is about, we're going to talk about it in a second, but yeah, they're going to go back and forth in this next episode.
I do like Jean and Madeline speak, and that's where Madeline names herself at that point, and I really do like how they have kind of a back and forth and saying, yep, we're good at that point. But Scott and Jean go back to their destroyed bedroom now. And I love the symbolic nature of the destroyed bed, them standing apart and saying, how are we going to repair this? It's not about questioning they don't love each other, but a lot has happened.
A lot of shit
has gone down. So,
yeah.
So we won't cut all post credits, but it basically kind of is a post credits without the
credits. It felt like one.
Yeah. So talk about that one. What do y'all feel?
Well, we got Storm just sitting there in like a bar, and someone walks up to her and's like, "Oh, the weather. It'd be nice if someone could just make all this rain go away." And as soon as he says that, that's when Storm's like, Speak plainly. Like, what? Who are you? What are you going on about? And he reveals he's the present day Forge, which I was trying to remember. I was like, did they meet before? But we've only seen Forge
Yes.
involved with the others a couple times. But
And especially the way Forge looked when we had the X Factor episode, he was very close to resembling future Forge too. And this is
Yes.
this, and so I was not saying Forge can't get a haircut, but I'm a little scratching my head on this one. With
We didn't get to see the leg. So again, he could be the same Forge. We last saw him. He used the X-Men as training for the X Factor.
yes,
So again, he is smart. He says here, "I'm a friend of Charles Xavier." So I will be interested to see, and I'm super excited because, like how he ended the Bishop part of this, we're going to get to see Forge in the future and Forge in the present. So I'm
because
gonna
Storm was in that episode, right?
yes,
I've seen it so many times, but I'm now
yeah,
brain farting on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So
So
we do know, like you said, the title of the episode. I can't remember the first part, but the other part of the title is Life Death, which is referring to a very storied comic, mini arc where Storm and Forge, Storm's going on a journey, and she meets up with Forge, and they kind of have a little love thing going on. It's entitled Love Death. So
until she finds out who made the gun.
maybe, you know. Yeah, I'm very curious to see if they're going to say that, because all we saw was, you know, what is it? What's his face? Executioner. Make it.
Yeah.
I just skimmed through the X-Men versus X Factor fight on YouTube.
Maybe Storm
and
isn't there.
Storm wasn't there.
Okay. So I mean, she did say like she acted like she didn't know who he was. So
That will make sense. At least look at him sticking to continuity and Brent checking on it in a matter of a minute.
That's what Brent is. He can get all that stuff there. So, but yeah, I agree. This is definitely has that ability of being. I make no qualms about that. If this is a top tier episode for the first three, great. It's I am okay. And like with everything, we got a series. There may be an episode there that maybe just needs back and maybe not there. But I'm. If this is what we put out for the first three, I think I'm feeling real good about the rest of the season, because this is all the reviews have been based off of these three episodes.
I got asked a question today from Allison when she found out I was going to do this with you guys. She said someone at work told her that X-Men 97 was the best thing Marvel's ever done, and she thought it was a movie too. So yeah, when she asked me, she's like, "So is it the best movie?" I was like, let's calm down a little bit. We're 3 episodes in. I've been with shows before where they've had fantastic goes with it and don't stick the landing. So this is a great thing, but let's not throw away the baby with the bathwater here. I really love this, Chris. This is a great 3 episodes, and I love how they end off one and move into the next one.
Considering you have a 1-year-old, you should avoid that phrase. Just saying, you should avoid that phrase.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but as always, Mr. Hines, love having you here.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you for letting me join. Later, gentlemen.
Later,
everyone.
Bye. Well, Brent, let's stay with animation, because we got a little treat that we recently found out that it would be released to the public. We first heard about this, I don't know, a couple months ago, but we weren't sure.
Yeah, for some festival or something, I don't remember, but I'm just glad they finally released it publicly.
Yeah, though yesterday or 2 days ago, the animated short, The Spider Within, a Spider-Verse story, produced by Sony as a kind of a prelude in between Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, had come out. So we're gonna, it's 7 minutes. I'm gonna put this at 1.5 speed, no sound or anything like that. Brent and I are gonna kind of, we both seen this a couple of times, but just kind of go through this and kind of talk.
Prefacing it with, it's going to be, parts of it are going to be a little scary and stuff, but just the way that they show the anxiety and the pressure, like right now, like what you have on the screen, all the different stuff going on, like his fights, his battles as Spider-Man, his being yelled at by his parents for his grades, all the school books that he has to go through, like all of it at once. Like the amount of pressure on this kid is so much, and I really think they did a great job just showing that at the beginning of this.
Yeah, it's like you said, he's still new at this. He's trying to balance being a son, being in school, being Spider-Man. He loves Spider-Man, but it's just in all the like physical getting beaten up all the time at that point. Like, how does he balance all this stuff? And
Block out his senses. Right?
Yeah,
Like
and
he's
we see
trying
all
to
these-
block everything out, but then he memories of everything that he's been anxious about come through, and it's hard. Like you realize, like this kid isn't just feeling the pressure; he's full blown like has major anxiety over what his life is.
And it just reminds me again. We go to Spider-Man 2, which always you see in the background of every single episode. So the poster from it, my favorite one choice. You know, that moment where on the train, Peter's unmasked, and they all like look at him and say like he's just a kid.
And
and he's
compared to
got-
Miles, he was Peter
Yeah,
was an adult at that point.
Yeah. And it's just, not at 1.5 speed, the whole thing before credits, 6 minutes. I really hope they do more of these. I know it's a lot, and it's money, it's things like that, but I think that these are kind of good things to kind of, especially we don't know when Beyond's coming out.
It was originally supposed to come out like this week.
Yeah.
In fact, this would be like our review episode for Beyond had it held its original date.
Yeah. So, but it was, I like it. I think it served a nice little treat at that point while we're waiting. But it's good. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's quick, and you get to see more Miles, and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Absolutely. I
So,
enjoyed it.
all right, Brent. Let's get into our with our feedback part of the show. What do we got for questions this week?
We got one question this week from Phil. He says, in regards to the Thunderbolts getting a new logo, do you guys know if the little asterisk symbol has any relevancy to the source material, or is it just another makeshift logo for the movie specifically?
I must have missed that asterisk symbol.
So I clarified with it. Florence Pugh put out like a behind the scenes thing of her walking around, and somewhere in the middle of that or towards the end of it, she shows like one of those like movie set chairs, like the director's chair or whatever. And on the back of it, it says Thunderbolts, and it says Thunderbolts with an asterisk next to it. And then I will tell you from Marvel Studios' official account, and I did clarify that that's what Phil was referring to with him. I went to Marvel Studios' official accounts on social media, and they shared that clip of Florence Pugh, and they even had Thunderbolts with the asterisk next to it.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, I don't know the answer. I don't know
I
why
don't
the
either.
asterisk is there. I don't recall seeing an asterisk with the Thunderbolts logo or anything like that. Like, if it was like a placeholder, like a wild card or something you'd get, then like something else is going to be there. But the fact that they took the time to like print it on their chairs makes me think that's just what the name is. So I maybe it's something we won't understand until the actual movie comes out. I'm super curious as to why they would add the asterisk, and like you, I didn't notice it at first either. I had to go back.
So
and
good
look,
on you, Phil, for seeing that.
But it's there. I wish I had an answer for you. I just unfortunately don't.
Yeah, sorry, we failed you this time, Phil.
So
but...
if anyone has any theories, I'd be interested to hear them.
Yep. All right, so only question this week. Thank you, Phil, for bringing that in. And all right, fact or fiction. So last week, Brent, you put these out there. So Daredevil Born Again will have the Marvel Spotlight branding. 64% said fact, 36% said fiction. Number 2, Daredevil Born Again will be released on both Disney Plus and Hulu like Echo was. 84% said fact, 16% said fiction.
Ironically, their combo app has officially released now.
I know, yeah. So technically, you might win based on
that doesn't count. If I can log into the Hulu app
I know.
see it, then I will count it.
Yeah, I get it. And during Daredevil Born Again, we will experience a snap and or blip from Matt's perspective. 71% said fact, 29% said fiction. Anthony DC Outlaw made a comment to it saying, I think we're done with the blip. I don't know. I don't know about that.
I don't know, especially with characters who we've never seen involved with the blip. I don't know if I would go. I call fiction on that, Anthony.
Yeah, but we'll see. We will see. All right, so my turn this week, Brent. So let me pull up mine. Wait a second as I get some water. All right. First one. There will be at least one previously announced MCU project that will be canceled before the end of Phase 6.
Is it Armor Wars?
I know this makes Mr. Snell happy, and I fully expect him to comment underneath it with a gif of Rhodia's War Machine, because he's been a big proponent as Armor Wars is a fake movie.
By the end of Phase 6?
By the end of Phase 6, we will get one project that will be no longer.
What's interesting is at this point, they haven't announced that many that aren't either in production or have finished production.
Yeah, we know Wonder Man's in production.
Which they still haven't technically announced, but yeah.
We got enough proof that it's happening.
Brad Wunderbaum even referenced it, but
yep.
I'm trying to think of what else has been announced but not entered production yet. There's been a couple things, but
Ironheart's going into probably reshoots at some point.
I'm going to go ahead and say fact on this. I just think statistically it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and say fact on it.
Yep, I'm a fact on it at that point. So we'll see. Like you said, statistically, it's bound to happen. And you know what? If it happens, it's okay that it happens. If it gives us better projects and for some reason they didn't have faith in it, I'd rather put out quality than quantity.
Sure. They wouldn't be the first movie studio to announce a movie and then back off of it.
Yep. All right, next, go back to the Spider-Verse. Tobey Maguire and/or Andrew Garfield will voice their respective Spider-Man in Beyond the Spider-Verse.
I'm going to say fact.
I'm a hard fact
there's a
as
good
well.
chance on that. Yeah.
If not one, that's why I say Toby and/or Andrew. So it gives me a little wiggle room on that one.
I'm saying fact, but my only hesitation is we saw them in the Spider-Verse, and it was their human forms. We didn't see them, and we did not see. We also have seen evidence that you don't change to match the universe. Like Miles didn't become a Lego when he went to the Lego world or whatever.
Okay, fair point.
We saw the Prowler as a human, right?
Yep.
And so I still am a fact. I feel like there's going to do something with them, but I don't know what it's going to be.
Fine. I will alter it in the sense of they will appear as their respective Spider-Man and leave it open to what we will get of them. But you're right. That is a good point to make, that they appeared as live action. They did not reappear as a live action. Excuse me, animated, yeah. With
archival footage, of course. Ungraded, not part of your question. Do you think it would be new footage? I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
In which they could use archival footage, but new voiceover.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, he's wearing a mask. They could do that, and then everybody wins.
Yeah, but you know what? They both love doing this stuff, and it gives them the opportunity. I wouldn't put it past them. And then my last one. We will get an official announcement of the cast of the MCU's X-Men before Secret Wars releases.
Fact. Mm-hmm. Especially because I think Secret Wars is going to get delayed. But I'm going to say fact.
Yeah, I'm a fact on this one just because people say, "Oh, that'll take away from Secret Wars." No, like with everything, they're gonna hype up what's coming next, and we do know more than likely post Secret Wars is going to be built with the X-Men,
the Mutant Saga.
Yeah, the Mutant Saga. So, but all right, I will put those out there Sunday afternoon, so let your voices be heard on that. And Brent, let us go back. Let's go forward, actually, and we continue on our journey through Old Man Logan.
I love this cover. Issue 70. Oh my gosh, this cover is so good.
This is the issue we've all been waiting on, even when we were originally reading this, because we're like, what happened? Why? He keeps on referring to this. What possibly could have happened? And yeah, we get it. And it's just more. It is just like a splash page bonanza of Wolverine. Basically, what he thinks, he's taking all these villains, invade the X-Mansion, and take down some of the students, and he's left to fend him, and he brutally kills a number of them.
Claw Dr. Octopus right like through their necks with them.
Yep.
Oh,
go for the heart. Man. Wolverine is the best at what he does, but my goodness, this is probably one of the brutal things we've seen in mainline X-Men for Wolverine.
He cuts off the head of Silver Samurai. It looks like he stabs Green Goblin. He's tearing up Mr. Sinister. Like, he is going through everybody.
Mm-hmm. But what's the revelation? As he's fighting Bullseye, What's the revelation?
And he mentions fighting Bullseye for about 90 minutes, and finally he gets the drop on him, and then he realizes it wasn't Bullseye to begin with, it was Jubilee. And he thought Jubilee was already dead, because towards the beginning of it all, there's a shot of like a huge piece of wood sticking out of Jubilee's head. So he thought she had already died. No, he was fighting her and seeing Bullseye. Why did it take 90 minutes? It didn't.
I know,
That was all just probably in his head that it took that long. But he realizes after the fact that his senses betrayed him. Mysterio played his games, and he could mess with what he sees, mess with what he hears, and mess with what he smells. And combined all that together, he was able to fool Wolverine.
Yeah, and we've seen Mysterio do this many times. We've seen him do it to Daredevil. Like, he can be... he can go after it at that point, and just looking at that utter devastation, killing all his friends and family,
Yeah.
I can get it. Like, at that point, like he said, he wandered at that point and just tried to kill himself by putting his head on the rails. And he said, yeah, well, when you have adamantium, it's going to hurt a lot, but didn't do the job.
Didn't do the job. Nope, didn't. Oh, such a brutal, gut-wrenching issue. Kind of reminded me of Injustice, the beginning of Injustice with Superman and the Joker, let's say, and we'll just leave it at that for people who haven't read it. But which, if you haven't read it, you should. It's good. But it reminded me of that, as going through it. And then at the end, they're teasing this Venom dinosaur coming at us next issue. So looking forward to reading that one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love the Venom dinosaur. That's Venom T-Rex. Why not?
Yep, pretty much.
All right. So episode 208 in the books, Brent. So, we got 4th episode of X-Men 97 next week. So I know Hines will be back. And, but yeah, tell people how they can follow you.
Brentak Prime on the socials. Feel free to reach out. DMs should be open, I guess. Let me know if they're not, but they should be open as far as I know.
Yeah. So again, I want to thank our sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout to get $2 off all the orders. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balga, all the socials. At that point, my other show, World's Finest True Believers, at Finest Believers, dropping a new episode on Sunday morning. Our frequent contributor and friend of the show, Phil, is coming back on to look at. I'll give the hint of it is a Batman story, but not one that usually gets talked about a lot. So preview drops Friday afternoon. You can you can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email. DMs are all open at that point. If you want to ask questions, propose fact or fictions, do it. We enjoy that kind of stuff. And rate and review Marvel Alliance solo feed, GUA network feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. Post credits. Yeah, Chris is gonna rage a little bit right now. Chris doesn't. I know I'm referring to myself in third person, but this story came out this week, and for those that don't know what's going on in Disney, there is a board fight going on, getting ready to happen between basically Bob Iger and a man named Nelson Peltz, who is trying to fight for himself and another person that's in his league to get 2 board seats. And it's been a big showdown in the sense of the votes coming up very soon. And Nelson Peltz is probably a name that very few people are familiar with, but his statements that he's been making have been getting the traction. And then this week, he came after Marvel. And he's trying to get people on his side to vote and shareholders to vote to get him on the board. And full disclosure, I am a shareholder of Disney at that point, and have already will be putting in my vote for this. But so Nelson Peltz spoke to the Financial Times and made the following statement. He holds actually around a $3.5 billion stake in Disney. And he says he's attributing to declined success of Disney Marvel movies to the quote-unquote woke strategy used for their casting of characters. He has suggested that the MCU has been putting out too many losers in recent years, and that it's time for a change in leadership. He continued on and said that they say we know nothing about the movie business. We don't claim we do, but I don't think they do. With 5 big losers in a row, this is direct quotes, Pelt said, they've lost first place in animation. They've lost first place in features. Maybe it's time to change management in these divisions. When pressed what he means that Feige should be fired, he added, I'm not ready to say that, but I question his record. He says, people go to a movie or show to be entertained. They don't go to get a message. Why do I have to have a Marvel movie that's all women? Not that I have anything against women, but why do I have to have that? Why can't I have a Marvel movie, Marvels that are both? Why do I need an all-black cast? All right, Mr. Peltz, with all due respect, I'm a former history teacher, and I do have to call you on some facts, and we may have a difference of opinion on what success and failure is, but you put out the claim that the last 5 movies have been losers. Okay, let's start with our first one in the 5, Thor: Love and Thunder.
I don't think he was actually talking about just Marvel movies for that, by the way.
Yeah, Marvel movies, yes. So Thor: Love and Thunder, $760.9 million. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, $859.2 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, $476.1 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $845.6 million. And The Marvels, $206.1 million, totaling over $3 billion made worldwide.
Yeah, but just to clarify, his five losers in a row isn't just Marvel. He means Disney.
Yeah.
He references losing first place in animation as well.
Yeah, but I'm just going to go with Marvel.
Referring to Feige and his record, $29 million for the MCU. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, that includes the Sony movies. It doesn't all go to Marvel, but that's movies Feige worked on. I don't know how you can possibly question his record.
Yeah, and I like it. He's kind of back to, I'm not saying like him, but we got to look at his choices. Mr. Peltz, have you ever read a comic book? Have you ever read any of the Marvel books? Do you understand what the X-Men represent? Do you understand what some of these characters represent? Daredevil, Black Panther, even Captain Marvel. I will say that you probably don't, and that explains some of your very out of touch and very out of date answers. He says, why do I have a Marvel movie that's all women? Well, a friend of the show, Mr. Ray at the Flightcast had talked about this on his recent episode, and I will say this to agree with him that the Marvels, yes, is a female-led movie. There are many male members of the supporting cast. A little man named Nick Fury, played by Samuel Jackson.
Yep.
Wakanda Forever, also a female African-American led movie, but also has African-American male members and also white supporting members. And, I'm sorry, let's also say representation matters too. We also have members of the Hispanic and Mexican community being a part of that as I almost had it for a time, but Namor's Tilokins at that point. Brent and I have said it many times in the show. Representation matters. I went on a huge celebration of what Miss Marvel represented in a sense of, as she says in that show, what a little brown girl from New Jersey can do at that point, what people look up to, what people represent matters. And I am a white man saying this, and I celebrate the diversity and stuff. Has Marvel recently tried to take some chances and focus that has, and for sometimes has worked and sometimes hasn't worked? Yes. Guess what? That happens, but these stories are celebrated. These people of different backgrounds, different skin colors, everything like that. It matters. and you think that it's a message. What do you think movies are, sir? What do you think movies are about? People, yes, they go to entertain, but there's also messaging in there, not to subliminally change people's opinions, but to get them to think a little different. And I think that scares you, that people don't think like you do. That concerns me. That if you don't think like you, it's wrong. I'm sorry, sir. I respectfully disagree. I respectfully disagree with you. And yes, I will be voting against you in this effort at that point, because no, I want Disney to take chances. I want them to try and have a welcome community. And I'm not saying Disney is the epitome of what a studio should do, diversity. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done at Disney and in Marvel Studios. But guess what? They're still trying. And I very much am against what you're putting out there, and shame on you for saying what you're saying at that point. You know, it concerns me.
In general, yeah, gotta co-sign that. I saw those quotes, thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Feige is the most successful movie producer of all time, arguably. I feel like, and so it certainly. I don't know who this guy is to question Feige's record, but he does not get that right.
I will also say his secret backer in this is a little man named Ike Perlmutter.
Yeah, well, he's a crock.
So if you want to look at that history at that point, yeah, he is also of the same cut and feels the same way. He was also responsible for preventing Kevin Feige from putting out and promoting the idea of a Black Panther movie, a Captain Marvel movie, much earlier. What the plan was to bring them out, and he was one of the figureheads that stood in Feige's way.
Right.
Until Bob Iger basically said, no, you step off this. This is going to happen, and do that. So he's also his secret backer in this. So we see that at that point. We see what you're doing. Again, I hope in this case, I know we've said a lot of stuff about Iger's recent track record at this point, but this is not someone we need on there. This is a step backwards. I'm all about diversity of opinion. This is an opinion that is a big step backwards if they get put on the board. So, anyways, sorry for that. Like I said, had to rage out respectively, but I see many problems with this, and yeah, he got my goat on this one. So, but all right, we will see you all next week for Marvel Alliance number 209, episode 4. Talk to you later. Bye.